This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
It just might be the greatest sports franchise in the history of sports. A place where legends are made, and there's always something to talk about. Get ready to immerse yourself in pinstripes. Start spreading the news, hosted by Paul Semendinger and E.J. Fagan, a couple of doctors with a prescription for Yankee fever. And now, here's Dr. Paul Semendinger and Dr. E.J. Fagan. Get ready to start spreading the news.
And here we are, ready to start spreading the news. Paul Semendinger, EJ, will be in the show in one moment. But I would just like to remind everyone that this is the Start Spreading the News podcast, and we are brought to you by Artemisia Publishing. Artemisia Publishing, a wonderful publisher out of New Mexico. Totally traditional, a regular publisher. They publish all sorts of great books, including a number of great sports books like From Compton to the Bronx, an award-winning book. The autobiography of the great Yankee Roy White, written by Roy White with me, and also the award-winning The Least Among Them. Marty Appel calls it the ultimate insider book, the story of the 29 players whose entire career lasted for just one game with the New York Yankees. So if you'd like to find the books from Artemisia, you can find them at apbooks.net. But now it's time for the Start Spreading the News program and our good friend E.J. Fagan. E.J., how are you tonight?
Doing wonderful. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. Had a nice 4th of July weekend. We were at the beach, saw some fireworks, and there was a concert on the beach. That was cool. Had a very nice time. How about you?
I had a tamer 4th of July, but it was good. We I don't know about you. We had fireworks going off till about 2 a.m. And yeah, they're just everywhere. But besides that, it was really peaceful. Nice.
Very nice. Now, I'm in an air-conditioned house. Last week at the end of the show, man, I was sticking to the chair. I was getting all uncomfortable. So I think we should be much better this week. I could be nice. Maybe we'll make it even a 2-hour show. I'm only kidding. All right, EJ, today we're going to play a silly game. I just invented it before the show. I showed you the graphic. The name of the game is Wrong or Right. There are 10 questions that we asked our studio audience about the New York Yankees in 2024 and generally in this entire era. And we will read as many of those as we can get to. And what your job will be what you'll do is you'll either say that's a correct statement or an incorrect statement. It's either wrong or right. And then you'll tell us why. Sound good?
Sure.
All right. Now, I previewed just a couple of the ideas ahead of time, but to make this totally random, there are 10 questions. I will let you pick the number 1 through 10, and that's the question I'll ask.
Give me number 1.
All right. So, question number 1. After your answer, I'll let you know if I agree or not, because some of these I agree with and some of these I don't. Some of these you may agree with and some of these you may not either. But anyway, question number 1. Brian Cashman is not a good general manager.
Well, you may have noticed, Paul, that I wrote a blog post after Friday night's loss. I was not happy, and it was called Fire Brian Cashman.
It ran on Start Spreading the News.
Yeah. I mean, look, we've been talking about, we talked about a lot this offseason, and then Brian Cashman basically, wasn't fired and had, got Juan Soto. And so we kind of quieted for a little bit. But I still think his problems are the primary reason why this team is bad. We can talk about other people in leadership, right? But I think ultimately this is Brian Cashman's organization. It has been for 3 decades. And he is consistently unable to field a deep lineup, or has been basically since the core 4 retired. And the reason why he can't field a deep lineup, the reason why a couple of injuries all of a sudden lead you to fielding 3, 4, 5 black holes in a single lineup is because he doesn't develop young players. The list of young players, Ben Rice is right. Ben Rice is a breath of fresh air. 3 home runs was fun. I think that even before he hit the 3 home runs, I think pretty much everybody who was watching him play was saying, this guy can hit. He's good. And I'm glad. And I think Brian Cashman, his team should get some credit for him, but it's a little too late. The Yankees have to play DJ LeMahieu every day right now. He has a OPS in the 400s because there is no alternative. The alternative is Oswaldo Cabrera with a 600 OPS, right? At least you can hope and dream that DJ LeMahieu will find it again. They have at times had to play Aaron Hicks. They had to play Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in the outfield. You can go down the list. This is not a one-season problem because Brian Cashman has not been able to bring young players up from the minors. I don't need young stars. The Yankees aren't going to draft your number 1 overall pick. But what I need are Ben Rices. That is players who are mid to late round draft picks, unheralded signings, who are just good. They're just good major league players. And that's all you need. You need someone who can play at the majors and be an average hitter. I went down the list of average hitters that Brian Cashman in his career had brought up to the majors. And there are fewer of them than there are on the Red Sox right now. And Cashman has been around for 30 years. That is a real problem.
Do you have that list?
Sure. That list is Brett Gardner, Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge, Robinson Cano, Melky Cabrera. You want to go back farther, you can give him credit, I guess, for Nick Johnson, for Alfonso Soriano, but that's ancient history, right? That is nothing. That is awful. Anthony Volpe is a good player, but not an average hitter. Austin Wells, I think, is probably going to be an average hitter pretty soon. He's been pretty good lately, and I have confidence in Austin Wells. So you might give him Austin Wells. You might give him Ben Rice soon. But that's not a lot. You might give him Jason Dominguez eventually. These guys aren't established yet. We don't know where they're going to, what the final word on them is going to be. And it should have happened a long time ago, right? The Yankees should have had 5 Brett Gardners since Brett Gardner came up, but they didn't. And if you just look around the majors, this is not hard. This is not something that the 3 teams in the majors have figured out. We're not talking about, the Guardians and pitching or something like that. No, like every team brings up fine major league players, hitters, all the time. And when a Giancarlo Stanton gets old or a DJ LeMahieu gets injured or whatever, they have guys to take over and push those veterans aside. The Yankees just don't have that. The Yankees have suffered some injuries, but they have suffered fewer injuries than most other teams in the majors, and yet those teams are not fielding such embarrassing lineups.
Yes. All right. So let me. I mentioned this on the Dr. Sem Yankee show on Saturday. I'm just going to walk you, and then I have a different question because people like to say, "Well, the Yankees, they don't draft high enough." And I want to get to that part in a minute. And the rules of Major League Baseball are against the Yankees, and I want to get to that secondly. But I think you're going to agree with me. You and I, and many others, have been saying for years there's a problem with the fact that the Yankees can't bring up players who are any good, and all these so-called wonderful stars flame out. None of them have been able to sustain. And then people say, "Oh, what do you guys know? You have a dumb podcast, or you have a silly blog, or you write a Substack article. You are not experts. You don't know." All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Not like the people who know anything, because they're wrong half the time or more. Or they're wrong as much as we are, if not more. Then Ben Ruda, I think that was his name, last year comes out and he says, "Yeah, the Yankees' developmental system is terrible. They're terrible. It's awful the way they develop players. They're doing it all wrong." And people are like, "Ooh!" And then the talking point became Ruda. What does he know? He's a failed minor leaguer. He doesn't know anything. It's just sour grapes. But now you've got two different groups saying it. You got a former player in the system. You've got a lot of people online who are watching the team, who are smart people, who know what they're doing. And then, about a week or so ago, you get Aaron Judge's personal trainer, his personal hitting coach, who says the Yankees' offensive approach is terrible, which brings up 2 things. Like, now you've got a third voice saying the same thing. And everybody always wants to say, when we say, like, there's a problem with the Yankee system, "Oh, yeah? It's so bad, huh?" Aaron Judge. And then you go, wait a minute. Did the Yankees develop Aaron Judge, or was this his personal hitting coach who's developed Aaron Judge?
Look, a stop clock is right twice a day, right? I think the Yankees are not literally developing nobody. They developed Aaron Judge. They developed Gary Sanchez. Maybe they develop Ben Rice. Gleyber Torres was traded for very late in his minor league career, but there are players that have worked their way through the minors and are playing in the major leagues in the Yankee system. The problem is the volume.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Judge should not be the unicorn. Aaron Judge is 32 years old. Gleyber Torres has had a rocky career in the majors despite having a lot of talent. Maybe that's his fault. Maybe that's the Yankees' fault. I don't think we should focus on process here. I think we should focus on outcomes. Brian Cashman is not, when you're GM for 2 years or something, then there's luck. You get bad luck sometimes. It happens. But Brian Cashman has been GM for a very long time, and I think you can judge his body of work. And I think his body of work is bad. And it's not bad because he doesn't have he has no strengths as a GM. I think there's things that Brian Cashman is very good at. Brian Cashman is very good at acquiring major league talent via trade. He's very good at not making a dumb free agent signing. There's relatively few dumb free agent signings in his tenure compared to, like, say, the Mets, or you can point to other ones. The Yankees are a professional organization in a way that the White Sox and the Rockies and the Angels and a bunch of others are not. But if he were good at developing if you were not the worst GM in the majors at developing young players, there would be more young players. The Yankees haven't traded away a whole bunch of great young hitters who are succeeding elsewhere. I can name like two. It's just something that he does not do. And the problem is that it is now impossible to build a contending team without developing a new young core of players. Not a good young player every 5 years, but a core of players like the Red Sox are developing right now, like the Blue Jays developed for a couple of years and unfortunately missed their window, unfortunately for them. The Astros developed, etc. The last time the Yankees were the dominant team was 2009, 2010, 2011. And they still had the core four, right? They still had a core of players developed before Brian Cashman. And then they supplemented those players with resources and money and all of that. And that's what you have to do. I don't think the Yankees are going to be able to build a team purely on old free agents. And they also they need to retire some of the core members of their roster that year after year are not getting it done. DJ LeMahieu is done. He should be DFA'd. We have a comment in here from Angelo.
Yes, I was going to get to it.
About discipline, right?
I'll pull it up.
Who are you going to replace these guys with? You got no one. You want to say Gleyber Torres? Are you going to play Oswaldo Cabrera? No, right? There's no one to replace them with because Brian Cashman is bad at this. There were a couple of guys that got injured at bad times, right? Jason Dominguez's injury was unlucky, and I don't think that's Cashman's fault really by any means. But what about the other outfielders? Is there anyone else? Like Everson Pereira wasn't the guy you were going to call up. He was playing terribly. There's not a stable of guys out there. When two guys, Caleb Durbin and Jason Dominguez, gets injured, you're out of depth. There's no depth left. Ben Rice was the guy that they kind of rushed up a little bit early, and it looks like I think he's gonna work out. But there's just not. This is not normal. If you just go around and just look through rosters of teams, there's just a lot of guys with like a 100 OPS plus lying around a bunch of major league rosters that would be better than DJ LeMahieu. That'd be better than Trent Grisham. I mean, just go down the list.
The Yankees have the financial wherewithal to cut these guys. I mean, if the Kansas City Royals or the Milwaukee Brewers or the Pittsburgh Pirates or whatever, maybe you say, well, we're stuck with them. We don't have that kind of financial power. The Yankees do.
I mean, it's a sunk cost, right? You're paying DJ LeMahieu no matter what. No one's going to take his contract. He is, if you DFA him tomorrow, if you let him play out his contract, you're paying him the same amount of money. So the question to me is not a money question. The question is do you have a guy you can take over for him? The Yankees, I think, got spoiled by the next man up season because they just keep trying to find that guy in the waiver wire, right? They keep trying to find the guy that was cast off by some other organization. They say, oh, we can do it. We can fix that guy. You can't. They did it once. They got lucky. Gio Urshela was really good. Mike Tauchman had a really lucky season. You know, you can go down the list. You know,
Luke Voigt. Yeah,
Gregorius came out of nowhere. They had a run, but that run is long in the distant past at this point.
Ronald Torreyes, all these guys who usually when a player plays over his head, he eventually gets to the level where he was at. And the Yankees did get lucky for a long time. Let me go to something I was just teasing a minute ago. There is this line of thought that, well, the Yankees can't win because Major League Baseball set up all these rules to make sure that no team is dominant. And, I understand all that. And I understand the luxury tax and all this kind of stuff. But those rules don't just apply to the Yankees. They apply to everybody. The Dodgers, and I hate to, the Dodgers are the outlier. Well, not necessarily, but they're the team that's most closest related to the Yankees with financial might. Somehow they've gotten to 3 World Series since 2017 or so. They have the same problems. They're winning every year. They've come into first place every year since like 2013 or something, with 1 second place finish in there. They're drafting late in the rounds. How is it that they, in the same exact rules apply to them? How are they able to do it year after year after year and sometimes get to the World Series while the Yankees can't? I mean, you have to then say, unless I'm wrong, that's an organizational failure, no?
They bring up young players is the answer, right? It's not a money thing. Excuse me.
I mean, partially money thing, because they go and they sign the big players like the Yankees do.
Sure. Look, I mean, the Yankees got Juan Soto, the Dodgers got Shohei Ohtani. They're the same player, right? They're really good hitters, right? I mean, Soto can play the field this season. Next season, Ohtani's going to pitch. That's different. They have the same record, the Dodgers and the Yankees. And frankly, the Dodgers are not in fantastic shape at the moment, but they're way more injured than the Yankees. Right, the Dodgers have Mookie Betts down for 2 months.
Correct, but we're not just talking about, and this is the other thing that happens. People then say, "Well, they have the same record." And I'm not criticizing you here. That's fine. Maybe the Yankees are going to be better than the Dodgers this year. This is
the worst season the Dodgers have had in a long time.
But the point is, the Dodgers have been able to sustained excellence, not sustained very goodness. That's what the Yankees have. Sustained very good. We're going to be very good. The Dodgers make it to the World Series. They even won one. Okay, it was tarnished. It was the COVID year. They still did it. I'd like a tarnished World Series from the COVID year for the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is, again, it's that they bring up young players. The Yankees and Dodgers are both going to have their version of Freddie Freeman, Ohtani, Mookie Betts. Right? The Yankees can do that. They have Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Garrett Cole, whatever. Right? That's something the Yankees can do. But they don't have the supporting cast of the Dodgers. They don't have a Will Smith to back those guys up.
Right, it's an organizational thing.
They don't have, last year's James Outman. Hasn't been great this year, but last year's James Outman to back them up. And I think it's the core problem. And frankly, I think I don't want to talk about this as a money problem. The Yankees, if Brian Cashman could develop young players, $300 million would buy you a ton of talent, right? You could have, if you had 3 more young players, if you could replace LeMahieu, Torres, and pick another player, Verdugo, with guys making the minimum, you could add 2 more guys making $30 million and spend the same amount of money. Right? That's how you build a winning baseball team. That's how the Astros were built. That's how you get a dynasty and not just a hope that everybody's healthy for 1 year finally. It's okay to have 1 or 2 of those old guys, right? It's okay to have one Giancarlo Stanton on your roster because, that you're taking a little bit of a risk, but the other players in your roster aren't all that risky. And so you'll be all right. The problem is the Yankees have a bunch of those guys and they've consistently had those guys and have relied on those guys without a plan B. The bench going into this season, it was Kevin Smith, Jahmai Jones, the catcher tandem is fine, and then Trent Grisham
and John
Birdie, right? That's not a good bench. You basically wasted 2 of those spots coming into the season and didn't play Grisham and Jahmai Jones for months. And then it turns out that when you need to play those guys every day, it turns out they're not that good. I mean, look, I had some kind of hopes for Trent Grisham this season. This guy's batted under 200 2 previous seasons before this. It shouldn't be a shock he's doing it again today. And he has slowed down. I thought he must be faster, right? He must have overcome his injury. No, he is slow now. He used to be a burner. He is now an average running player. That was a scrap heap move by Brian Cashman.
I think you
and
had
now
to
they're
take Grisham in order. This is where we will disagree here. I think you had to take Grisham in order to get Soto. I'm fine with that. Where I want to see the Yankees use their financial might, in addition to getting the great players, is to say, and they used to, this is how, and I know George Steinbrenner, but this is how George used to work. If he was paying a guy and a guy wasn't doing, he'd be like, all right, I'm getting rid of him. I'm not just going to keep him because I'm paying him. And once they made the trade, they could have then moved Trent Grisham. They didn't need him, and that's $5 million. Now, again, you could have replaced him with a rookie if they had one.
Right.
Dominguez, of course, was hurt, but even outside of that, they could have found a cheaper alternative. Somebody would have wanted him. I remember over the winter, somebody argued with me, and they go, "Well, you can't acquire a guy and trade him." I said, "Why couldn't you?" That happens all the time. In 1979, Thurman Munson died. Horrific. Terrible. After the year, the Yankees traded Chris Chambliss, their first baseman. I think it was a couple other players in the deal, but Chris Chambliss, the main part of the deal, Chris Chambliss to the Blue Jays for Rick Cerrone, who then became the Yankee catcher for a good number of years. And in 1980, he actually had his best year ever, replacing Munson and Cerrone's first full year as a Yankee. He actually had a really good year. But Chris Chambliss never played for the Toronto Blue Jays. They flipped him to the Braves, and then he played for the Braves. Teams can do that. So you got Grisham. That was the cost of getting Soto, but you can now afford, you're the Yankees, to either DFA him if he doesn't look good in spring training or trade him and then bring somebody else in.
I mean, the problem is that you got to have someone else to bring in. Like, I don't really care if you DFA a guy or you trade him because you're not getting anything from out of the trade. You could eat most of his salary and trade him.
But the Yankees can do that. That's my point. They
but
can
they
afford
but
to
they don't
do
have
that.
anyone to replace him. You trade Trent Grisham, who's playing outfield, right?
Well, at that point, Pereira wasn't hurt. That could have been your move.
I mean, Pereira might be worse.
But you'd rather have the young kid.
I don't know. Like, I think that Pereira is really bad. And Pereira had like a 40% strikeout rate or something at AAA. I mean, if you're in a situation like last year where you've conceded the season, sure, that's fine. But you're not conceding the season. You're trying to win. I think the problem is that you don't have anyone better than DJ LeMahieu right now. Right? I mean, who else could possibly fill that role? There's nobody at AAA to play third base. There's just no depth. And there's no one to trade at AAA to get someone like that, right? You could imagine the Yankees trading for someone else's depth player, but the Yankees don't have any, depth players to exchange.
I think you're right, Angelo. I think IKF.
Yeah, it's very normal for that.
Right, but then this is what drives me crazy. People argue things like you can't trade him. You just got him. Yes, you can. And they could have traded Verdugo. No, again, I've loved Verdugo, and it's a shame he hasn't hit for a month and he can't hit lefties, but he's brought a special level of energy.
He can't hit lefties. Right? That was foreseeable. We saw that the second he was traded. And the plan to start the season was play him against lefties and righties.
Mm-hmm.
That's so stupid, right? He's got a record. He's got a baseball card. We know the answer. The answer is he's really good against, or he's okay against righties, and he's one of the worst hitters in baseball against lefties. Why was there no plan? Right? Your backup outfielder is a lefty. I get it. He's a lefty with reverse platoon splits. He's bad against both sides. Right? Like, why was there no plan to find someone to do that? I'll tell you, there's one reason. One, Giancarlo Stanton, your DH, can't play the field, right? So you have a useless player clogging up a DH spot. And so you couldn't plan to have an extra outfielder who would sometimes DH, and you'd rotate those guys around. Instead, they just played him against lefties. The Yankees like to say, trust the process. It's a phrase that basically means, don't trust short-term results, trust what you expect to happen over the long term, given that you think you know what you're doing. And that's usually good advice, but you have to follow it. And part of trusting the process is doing things like getting a platoon partner for Alex Verdugo, right? I mean, this is not
making decisions that make sense, right, over the long term. All right, let's move on to another one. There are 9 more. We're not going to get to them all, which is fine, because when you watch a game show on TV, they don't get to every question, so that's fine. But pick a number.
Give me 2.
Oh, all right. Hal Steinbrenner doesn't care about winning a World Series.
I find it hard to get into Hal Steinbrenner's head. If it's just a financial thing, I think winning a World Series makes financial sense. right? You make a lot of money. The Yankees franchise ultimately depends on winning things. I just don't think he knows how to get there. I don't think Hal Steinbrenner is an awful owner by any means. I think the worst kind of owner is the meddling owner. So, for example, Art Moreno of the Angels is refusing to rebuild. The Angels have a bunch of like guys who are going to be free agents in a year, and he just doesn't want to trade them. He just says, no, we're going to keep trying to win, and they're awful, and they need to rebuild, and they also need Art Moreno to stop making baseball decisions because he's not very good at them. And there's, Baltimore's recently left owner was a similar kind of person. Colorado's owner is like that. So he doesn't meddle, which is good. But he's a rich kid who was given $1 billion team to run. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I think that there's obvious problems with the Yankees organization. Those problems are rooted in the guy in charge of the Yankees organization, Brian Cashman. And the only person who can do something about it is the owner. And I just don't think he knows how to do that. I don't think he knows how to find another GM once Brian Cashman is gone. I just think he's a clueless rich kid who happens to own the New York Yankees.
Interesting. It seems as though the Yankees are very happy. And now, how do I know this? But it seems as though the Yankees seem very happy. They're what are they, 5-15 over the last 20 or something terrible. They've played some of the worst baseball in Major League Baseball over the course of the last month. And yet Yankee Stadium was packed to the gills with during the Red Sox series. And I think at some point, if you're an owner who's a fan, you're like, oh, all right, I want these fans to see a winner. I'm really excited about winning. If you're an owner that looks at the bottom line, and unfortunately, a lot of times when Hal Steinbrenner speaks, that's what he talks about. Well, we're spending a lot of money. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you wonder if they're just looking at, or he's just looking at the bottom line. Hey, we're making a ton of money. We have a very good team. I have a neat product. I'm filling up my stadium. I'm making gazillions of dollars. Ain't so bad. All right, ready? Pick another number.
Hold on. Sorry about that. Give me 4.
Wow. This is why I love you, EJ. 1, 2. I'm getting ready for 3. You're going to agree with this one. I'm almost positive. But anyway, after Saturday, there was a lot of comments. First base is now solved. We're watching the ESPN game on Sunday night. And they're putting pictures of Wally Pip-Up and stuff. Like, okay. All right. So here's number 4. Ben Rice hasn't really proven anything yet.
I mean, sure. I think that's right. I think there is, there's, you think about sample sizes, and there's kind of 2 problems with small major league sample sizes. One is just random chance. That is that, just, you need more observations to really say anything statistically about a person. And if you look at Ben Rice's batting line, you probably don't have a good representation of how good he is because he just hit 3 home runs. And so he looks like an MVP given his batting line. And the other is that the rest of the league adjusts to people. And so you have a player who comes up and they're successful, and then the league adjusts back, and we all know that chain of events. I think that the small sample, the statistical small sample size problem, I'm not worried about because I'm not looking at stats right now. I don't think his stats are worth looking at after 2 weeks. The league adjustment problem, I'm curious to see what happens. But when you watch Ben Rice play, I have more confidence than in any player the Yankees have brought up in a long time that he'll be able to adjust to it. He looks like a hitter. He looks like a guy who can work counts. He looks like a guy who will have decent power. He doesn't look like an all-star. He doesn't physically seem like he has the tools to be an all-star. One problem is that he's a catcher. And so he doesn't have the muscle of a big-time first baseman. Like, he's still kind of lean. He's actually kind of fast too, sneaky fast, at least for the Yankees. And so he doesn't look like a guy who's going to slug like 40 home runs. But I think he can hit 25. I picked him up in my fantasy leagues. He's catcher eligible. Like I think he's pretty good. Overall, I think Ben Rice. I am optimistic about Ben Rice's ability to play. He's also 25 years old, same age as Juan Soto, so I think he's going to stay healthy. And I think the way you get good young players on your roster is you call up a bunch of them, and then you hope half of them succeed. And so Rice is one of the players they've called up. Most of the ones they've called up recently have not succeeded. Some, like Volpe, have succeeded on one side of the ball, but not the other. But I think Ben Rice, I think Ben Rice is for real. Honestly, it's hard to watch him and not just look like you're watching a major league hitter, but we'll see when, major league pitchers discover that he can't hit a slider or something.
EJ, you just said something that I'm just writing some names here so I don't forget them, because I don't want to forget them as I do this. And so I ask all the people who are watching would say, like, all right, you're mixing up eras. You're over exaggerating a little bit here. So I'm going to over exaggerate just a little bit because I'm really dipping into the late 80s, into the early 90s, and into the championship years. I'm oversimplifying this a little bit to a point to make a bigger point, because I think you just said something that really is quite an interesting statement. You bring up a whole bunch of guys, you give a lot of guys a chance, and you see who sticks, you see who makes it. That's basically what you were talking about, right? Okay. So everybody likes to talk about the core four. And they brought up Jeter and they got Mariano and all that. And I didn't even list pitchers, but I could name like Sterling Hitchcock. But in this era, when the Yankees were calling up young players to see who stuck, you had Roberto Kelly. He was then replaced by Bernie Williams. Kelly was traded, for Paul O'Neill. But you had guys like Ruben Rivera. You had Gerald Williams. You had Jim Leyritz. You had Randy Velarde. You had Oscar Azokar. You had Kevin Moss. And again, I'm trying to do this and talk at the same time and come up with this list of guys. The Yankees just didn't bring up Derek Jeter. Like the Yankees brought up Anthony Volpe. There's our guy, and that's who we're sticking with, and that's going to be great. They didn't just bring up Derek Jeter. They brought up Derek Jeter amid a collection of players who they were calling up and saying, all right, let's see if this guy can stick. Well, Velarde's actually pretty good. He could stick around as a reserve player. And Jimmy Leyritz is a pretty good guy. He's not going to be our starting catcher. He really can't play anywhere well defensively, but he's got an impressive bat and he doesn't get intimidated by a big moment. So, we'll keep him around. But other guys like Oscar Azokar, and I'm trying to think of some others off the top of my head who Hensley Mullins, who came up and didn't quite pan out. They were like, nope, you didn't make it. And so you have this group of kids, and then the cream, the Jeters and the Posadas, rose to the top, and they had them. But I don't think anybody's ever really made that point like that you just did. You bring up a whole bunch of guys, and some of them stick.
It's the statistician in me. I think about distributions of outcomes. Look, I think, the 98 Yankees are a tough team to talk about because they're just legendary, right? They're one of the best ever. Think about this year's Orioles. You can think about Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson. Excuse me. They're great. They're stars. They're going to be problems for a long time. Hopefully they hit free agency before they sign with the Orioles. But that's not why the Orioles are good, right? The Orioles are good because they also have Ryan Mountcastle, who is, has a 766 OPS. Right, we would kill for a 766 OPS player right now. They have Jordan Westberg, who is an 835 OPS, just kind of out of nowhere. Colton Cowser, Anthony Santander, Ryan O'Hearn. These are not all-stars. They're not players that you're going to have Yankeeographies about one day if they're on the Yankees. I don't know, maybe they did a lot of those.
Oriolography.
Yeah, right. These are just above average major league hitters. And that's what the Yankees have been missing. The Yankees can go out and sign some big Latin American prospect for $5 million, and maybe it turns into Jason Dominguez. And I think Jason Dominguez is going to be really good. But you can't do that frequently enough, especially if you're not going to like tank and lose for 5 straight seasons, like the Orioles did, to get Henderson and Jackson Holiday and all those guys. Because you're not going to do that, you need to bring up a steady stream of above average players, maybe one core prospect, good prospect every once in a while, or great prospect. And then you got money, and you spend money to get the rest of the roster. You get your stars with money, and you fill out the roster with good players. The problem is the Yankees have been filling out the roster with non-players, players who aren't any good, either waiver wire claims or veterans that they try to get a deal on, and it turns out that deal doesn't work out, whatever, right? I mean, they don't even have like a Nick Swisher, a solid player they signed as a free agent who was 29 years old, and they played him for a while. They can't do that when they go in the free agent market, because they don't have any money left to spend. I get they could spend a lot more money. I just want to table that, right? They're spending $300 million.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
It's not like they're
but $100 million of that is going to players who are bad or not playing, right? Or more than $100 million, I think, at this point, right? Rodon, $28 million. Giancarlo Stanton, who's been a little better lately, has some hopes for him when he gets back, but $35 million, whatever he's actually getting paid, $25 million cap hit. LeMahieu, $15 million. They're still paying Aaron Hicks this season. There's a lot of players on this team, Anthony Rizzo, who are non-contributors, and they're non-contributors for perfectly reasonable reasons. They're old. Old is bad in Major League Baseball. Some players are great into their old age. I think Aaron Judge is going to be one of them. But most normal players are not good when they get old. And it's okay. Sometimes you got to sign those guys to long-term deals because that's what it takes. You got to pay them money. But then you just got to dump them when they're not good anymore. And you have to have guys in the stable to replace them. The Orioles aren't playing Chris Davis anymore, right? I don't know if Chris Davis would still be under contract with the Orioles. I'm not sure, right? But they just ate the money. And then they found Ryan Mountcastle to be fine, right? The Yankees are not finding the guys to be fine. Angela has a comment in here.
About on the right side. Yep.
If Rice plays well, that's one position they don't have to worry about filling in 2025. Exactly. Because you can pay him $800,000 to be a fine first baseman, to be your Ryan Mountcastle, which means then you can go out and you can pay Juan Soto $800 million to be your right fielder. Or in addition to paying Juan Soto, every time you add a player, now you can add a Nick Swisher, right? You can add a Yamamoto. You can keep going out and finding players to pay money to who are good. They're not. You don't have to spend the money on great players. Occasionally, those free agents will come up, and that's fine. But you don't have to go bargain hunting. When the Yankees traded for Josh Donaldson, they thought they were being smart. They said this guy's a value. Right? Yeah, he's getting paid $25 million. Yeah, he's kind of old. But if we get lucky, he can be. That's the word. He can be an MVP, right? We can be smarter than the other guys, but they're not. Alex Verdugo was that guy. The Red Sox gave him away for free. Jose Trevino was that guy, and sometimes that works out. Trevino worked out for one season. Trevino's fine. He's a good catcher. Like he's got some problems because he's getting old, right? But like whatever, right? But the reason why these players are going away for free is because they're not that good. The Yankees need to pay like grade A prices for grade A players. They need to pay sticker price sometimes, but they can't because they don't have young players to save that money on. So if they want to keep Aaron Judge, if they want to get a Garrett Cole, if they want to trade for Giancarlo Stanton and then have to, sit on his contract for a long time, they need to fill out half their roster with guys, and they're just unable to do that. And I feel like I'm repeating myself a million times in this because we had the same exact discussion during the offseason. And it felt like the Yankees had figured it out. They traded for Juan Soto. They put together a great pitching staff. In May, it felt like everything was working, but then a little bit went wrong, right? It didn't go catastrophically wrong, right? We didn't lose anybody for the full season. We lost Giancarlo Stanton. We lost Anthony Rizzo, who was already not playing very well. That's it. That's what went wrong. And that caused this team to just fall apart. I think about, forget Ben Rice for a second. Austin Wells, who I think, if you look at his numbers, has for a while now looked pretty good. He hasn't looked like an all-star. He's not a good enough defensive catcher to be that good, but he's a fine enough defensive catcher and he's a fine enough hitter. And that is going to be so valuable if he can keep doing that. He's not going to win you a World Series on his own, but he could be if he's your number 7 hitter, you're in good shape. But I feel like the Yankees are going to make him their cleanup hitter soon. Because they just they have no other options. He's better than Verdugo. He's better hitter than Verdugo. Sure, put him cleanup. Right? I mean, Ben Rice went from being a guy who is a AA
to the leadoff hitter.
To the leadoff hitter.
It's unbelievable.
Right? And you know something? He's the best leadoff hitter they got. Right?
No, I disagree.
I mean, who else is going to do it?
Juan Soto. We talked about that.
Sure, whatever. You need 4 or 5 really good hitters.
Absolutely.
You need someone either before or after Soto, before or after Judge, right? And like their third best hitter is a guy is Ben Rice. And like that's defensible because there's no one else to put there.
It's unbelievable.
We can talk about Verdugo leading off or Rice at 4. Who cares, right? Like someone's got to play in those spots.
All right, give me another number.
Give me 10.
Clay Holmes is not a closer.
I think he's fine. I mean, look, Clay Holmes goes through like streaks where like his sinker is being weird and he can't throw it for strikes for a little bit. And then he's like dominant for 2 months. That's pretty common among closers.
It's a very volatile position. We've talked about this. That's why Mariano Rivera was such an anomaly.
Frankly, Aroldis Chapman for a long time was so good for so long. I think he's a fine major league closer. I don't think he's the best closer in the game. I think the Yankees are going to let him walk this season. But
he's not young either. How old is he?
It's 31, I think, something like that. He's up there.
He's getting there.
Well, they traded for him pretty old, right?
Yeah.
He's fine.
What? He's one of those guys they found on the scrap heap and turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah. And the Yankees have done that a little bit with pitching that's a little more reliable. The problem is that they try to do it too much. Mm-hmm. They bought into their own thing a little too much. I feel like the Yankees, for their pitching staff, were hoping that they could just kind of get to Scott Efros and JT Brubaker and Lou Trevino and all those guys. They couldn't because they had ended up with like 2 good pitchers in their entire bullpen. The Canely thing didn't work out. The Canely signing didn't work out. The Weaver signing did. Jeff Weaver's pretty good. The Michael Tonkin thing kind of worked out, right? Like the Yankees have been able to put together some relief pitchers, but they can't put together 8 relief. You can't do it 8 times, right? I mean, you can add 1 or 2 of those guys in spring training to fill out your bullpen, but that was their plan A this season. And then what happens? A little bit goes wrong. Scott Efros has a setback. Lou Trevino has a setback. Canely regresses back into bad form. Whatever, right? A little bit goes wrong, and the whole house of cards collapses because they have no depth.
No doubt. All right, give me another number.
Give me 9.
Oh, I like this one. Garrett Cole will not be an ace going forward. We've seen the best of Garrett Cole, and he's going to be a good pitcher, sort of like the second half of CC Sabathia.
I think it's wrong. I think I think that I will lose faith in Garrett Cole when his velocity drops. I think for now, he's coming off of injury, probably need another start or 2 in the minors in hindsight, and he's gotten hit around a little bit. I think Garrett Cole will be fine.
Interesting. Okay. I've been saying, everybody says, the Yankees are getting the Cy Young Award winner back. And I keep saying, no, they're not. They're getting
They might be getting 2022 Garrett Cole back, who was really good, except that he allowed a bunch of home runs. And that's what it feels like a little bit. Like whatever extra gear he found last year, he doesn't have right now. But I think he deserves a little more time.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I said that before he ever came back. It's easy to say when he comes back, the Yankees are getting player X, but player X was last year, and pitchers are volatile. They don't necessarily have long, and he's already had a long open great window, and then they get hurt, and they're often not the same. But anyway, all right, give me another number.
Also, I should say Garrett Cole might still be injured.
That
right?
is could be.
Right. He still might have an elbow problem that we don't know about. Give me 3.
I'm not going to just close up the injury thought. I was the guy who said Judge is injured. And maybe he was in April. Maybe that was why he was doing so bad. But obviously, to this point, he has proven me way wrong on that. All right, number 3, the one you had skipped, Aaron Boone has got to go.
I think he's not the problem right now. I think Aaron Boone, he hasn't made a lot of head-scratching decisions like he has in the past. I just don't think I think the problem lies that the personnel aren't there for him to play.
Do you see it as a problem like the Yankees lose and they lose and they lose? And there's been a tweet about this. I think I put it up on Start Spreading the News today and a list of other tweets. 2022, August 19th, or whatever the day was. I'm just making the dates up. It's right in front of us. July of 2023, it's right in front of us. July of 2024, it's right in front of us. We just have
you got to say
it.
something to the media, and you're not going to say we suck, right?
Well, okay, but why can't you?
Because your job is to play. Like your job is to say something every day to beat reporters, and there's just not. I just don't think that any athlete's going to go out there. I don't think any manager goes out and says like, "Oh yeah, this team's not any good. We're going to lose. Woe is me." That's just not how managers work. So I never really care what Boone says to the media. I don't like it when he lies to us.
No.
He hasn't really lied to us this season so far. This player's healthy. When
it's a low bar here.
True. But like, I
haven't lied to me this week.
I don't know what manager could fix this team.
I don't know. I agree with that. I wrote that in that article. I don't know who you could bring in that would turn anything around.
No, the player, the personnel. DJ LeMahieu is still going to be old. Right?
Correct.
Like,
it would be nice to see the manager say, you know what? We've gone through this a couple of years. I know it's right in front of us. I know we have the talent, but I got to be honest. This just stinks. These guys are not playing to their ability, and it's my job to get them.
Are they not playing to their ability? Like, who's playing under their ability?
Well, I'm
right.
Listen, I would love to have the manager say something like that. I am frustrated with these guys. After this press conference, I'm closing the door, and we are going to have a heart-to-heart in that locker room.
But who's the to me, like, the personnel are all playing exactly as you would expect.
Glaber is not playing to his ability.
Glaber's never played to his like. What is Glaber's ability? I don't know. Like Gleyber Torres, he's only had one manager, so you never know. But like, Gleyber Torres just seems to me like somebody who isn't good at handling the daily grind of Major League Baseball. Anthony Volpe, I think, is playing fine. First off, I think Anthony Volpe is playing great. He's not hitting.
All right, wasn't that a big part of it?
He's like top 20 in wins above replacement because he's a shortstop. I mean, the expectations are your question here, right? I mean, Anthony Volpe has become one of the top 20 hitters in the major leagues, right? Which is fine. He's just not doing it at the plate. He's doing it other places.
Right, one of the top 20 players is what you're saying.
Yeah, but if he were your 7 hitter, and he's playing, he's got a slightly below average batting line. That's contact oriented. When he gets on the bases, he does really well. Maybe he bunts a little bit because he's playing low in the order. And then he's a Gold Glove defender. Like, that's
the fact
great.
That he walks 3 times in a month.
I mean, his problem is that he's not a good hitter, right? Like, to me, Aaron Boone can't.
So he's not a good hitter. So he's another guy who's underperforming. How about the fact that on that play the other day, he walked, basically jogged home and didn't score the run?
I mean, that was weird. But I also think that every stuff, I don't think that's unique to the Yankees. It was a weird play. It was magnified because the Yankees can't score runs, right? Those types of plays always look worse when you're bad because you can then lose a game by 1 run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like Anthony Volpe is not a guy who doesn't hustle out there. It was a weird play. He's a young player. They're going to make mistakes like that. You can talk about LeMahieu not, getting into a pickle in order to allow the run to score. Mm-hmm. LeMahieu's not a young player.
Yes. That's part of
but
it.
Like, I don't, again, I think if you look at any team, you'll find stuff like that. And I think it just gets magnified because they're the Yankees.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. I'd still like to see him show a little emotion. you know what? It's all good. Everything's great.
I think they throw the
Sunshine and
chairs when
rainbows.
we're not watching.
I don't know. I've never heard that. And I don't necessarily need chairs being thrown. And listen, I love Aaron Judge and all that, but I'm hearing the same criticisms about him smiling. It's all good. We're going to come around. At some point you need somebody to say, it's not good. It's not good.
Well, the
None
thing
of
is,
this good.
again, the problem, we're not talking about Juan Soto batting 260, right? Or Anthony Volpe, leading the league in errors, right? That would be, I think, when you would throw the chairs.
I don't know. They're 5 and 15.
I mean, like, you're going to make Jose Trevino's arm better? Like, no, like that's not going to happen. You're going to make Luis Gil's control better? Like, no, like that. You go down the list. I mean, the problem is that you got a bunch of players who aren't very good. And I just don't think any amount of managing or leadership can solve that. I mean, Aaron Judge is a very, very good baseball player, and is pulling his weight more than anything. But he can't write someone else's name into the lineup card that they don't have.
Yeah, I understand that. All right, let's go to the next one. We're going to disagree on that because I'd like to see a little more emotion. But anyway,
all right, what's the next one?
I don't know. You have 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Give me 7.
Oh, this is the Tuesday discussion question for tomorrow on Start Spreading the News. It's time to sell.
No, this is a team that could very well make the playoffs, probably will make the playoffs, could fix itself. No, I don't think you sell because, one, that means trading Juan Soto, which I think significantly decreases the chances that you sign him long term. And besides that, like, I'm not really sure what you get value for. You're not getting anything for Torres. You're not getting anything for Verdugo. You're not getting anything for Trevino. Maybe an extra Cortez, right? But like, I just don't. I don't really see what the point of that is.
EJ, I agree with you. I think it's time to go in.
I think you buy. Yeah,
absolutely. We talked last week. I think it was last week about getting Vlad Guerrero. And so many, while we were talking, I was originally saying, no way, I don't want Vlad Guerrero. And then we're talking. He's 25 years old. He's younger than Ben Rice. I mean,
yeah, I mean that, now it's like, okay, do I actually want to trade Ben Rice for Guerrero? I don't know. Yeah. But
I would in a heartbeat.
I think so too. I like Ben Rice a lot, but I think,
but that's irrelevant, correct? Yes.
Right. But like, I don't. I think right now the trade market is really weird. I think you'd start to see trades around now if there weren't so many teams that are like 2 games below 500 and still have a shot at the wild card.
Oh, like the Mets. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Pete Alonso. Mets are under 500, but they had that streak, and all of a sudden they're not out of it. And so
yet they're still under 500. Yeah, I mean, a big part of this is the Yankees are in the American League East, and we want the Yankees to win this division. And right now, I should say this. The Orioles have been bad too.
Right. But they still picked up a bunch of games on the Yankees.
Yeah, they've been just less bad than the Yankees. But like, I worry the Red Sox are going to pass us. I think we're 3 games in the loss column above the Red Sox. But this is also sometimes just a matter of expectations and perspectives. So the Mets are really confident right now because they might poke above 500 and sneak into a third wild card slot with 81 wins. Like, that's not a vote of confidence in your team.
No.
But also, the Diamondbacks won 83 games last year and they made the World Series, and the Rangers won 90 and they won it. So, I think any chance you have to go into the playoffs, you take that chance, you roll the dice, you try to make your team better. And, you hope that your problems get sorted out by then. The Yankees have guys on this roster who could be good. Their problem is they need to get rid of the guys who are really, really bad. That's how you build a baseball team, is you don't have massive numbers of below replacement level players. But the Yankees every year end up having like 3-4 guys who are -1 wins or something, which just kind of sinks all of that incredible advantage you get by having Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and all those guys on the team.
Indeed. It is, by the way, it's raining in Sydney, Australia, as our show goes worldwide. Maria, who I think, commented a couple of weeks ago. He said that if Maria buys your book, it will be going internationally. She's in Australia. So if she bought the book, let's hopefully she did. Tell us about the book. The Thinkers.
The Thinkers, The Rise of Partisan Think Tanks and the Polarization of American Politics, available from Oxford University Press on Amazon right now. Book's going well. Right now I happen to be a little bit in the news.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Not my book specifically, but the topics of the book are currently under discussion. And I think it's selling pretty well. It's kind of hard to tell. Selling pretty well for a academic book is not actually selling all that well. I was told by a friend of the show, Tevi Troy, that the font is a little small. So I apologize to everybody for that. Maybe just my young eyes haven't gone to the point where I think the font. Well, actually, honestly, the font is kind of small. Now that Tevi points it out. But other than that, I've heard only good things about it, and it makes a wonderful summer gift.
Yes. And you know what? It's never too early to start thinking about the holidays. They'll be upon us before you know it. And why don't you get ahead of the holiday rush and get a copy of The Thinkers? Look at this. Look at this. You got to love Mike Whiteman.
I just want to apologize to Mario.
Yes.
You called him Maria.
I did because you know what, EJ? You want to talk about small font? I don't have the comments brought up big. So let me first, sorry, Mike, Mario. See, he put it on all capital letters. So Mario, I apologize. It looks like, you ever go to the eye doctor and they're saying like, what letter is that? And you're like, I think it's an A, but it might be an O. It might be an E. So my eye was making it an A, but it's definitely an O when you capitalize it. So thank you for that, Mario. Get a copy of EJ's book. Let us know if you got it. But let's go back to Mike Whiteman. Look at this. It is well written.
5 stars. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. So yeah, Mike Whiteman, one of the best people. EJ, you and I have never met personally in human form. We've
not back in Jersey all that much anymore. Yeah.
We've known each other for a decade or so. It's been a long time. So one of these days, but I've had the pleasure of meeting Mike Whiteman on a couple of occasions. We live in different states. He's out in Pennsylvania. I'm in New Jersey, but we've dined together a few times, and I'm telling you, you want to talk about good human beings. It's always nice. Good people bring me up, and it's just always nice to be in the presence of somebody who's just an absolute great human being. And you know what? That's Mike Whiteman. So, Mike, thank you. And thank you for the positive words about EJ's book. EJ, do you have any parting thoughts here before we turn it off and head to the All-Star break?
My parting thought is, I wonder how bad things have to get for there to be some significant change, either in the front office, in coaching, in personnel. The Yankees have gone through almost a worse stretch than they had in years. I mean, the Yankees have been playing like a 200 baseball team for a while now, and it hasn't been pretty. They haven't just barely been losing games by bad luck. They've been losing games in a lot of different ways, but overall just not hitting. And the All-Star break is coming up, and if they don't turn it around in the next, 6 games they have till the All-Star break? 5 games?
6.
I wonder if you see something like you saw last year, but bigger. So last year you fired Dylan Lawson, brought in Sean Casey. Firing the manager is one of the only moves that you got, but I also do wonder if it might be time to fire Brian Cashman. Probably an off-season thing. But if they lose 5 of those 6 games, which is entirely plausible, I mean, it can get real bad real quick.
All right, so here's the thought. And listen, I think Brian Cashman one day will have a monument in Monument Park. I think overall his body of work has been. Oh, Mario, look at this. Show me a screenshot of the book.
The Thinkers.
Pull up your name now. Pan up.
Boom.
EJ Fagan.
I'm not really in focus. I'm sorry, but yes.
Nice. How about this? And I don't want Brian Cash. I mean, I would like to see change because I want the Yankees to win. I wish Brian Cashman could do it. I think he's proving like I need total control. Okay, you've got it, and the results aren't there. So at some point you have to own the results that aren't there. Imagine you fire him and then you say Omar Minaya is now your GM because he's your assistant GM or whatever. And Omar, pulls off in one day. He pulls off Vlad Guerrero and Corbin Burns or whatever. Thanks, mate. Oh, you gotta love Australia. All right, thank you, Mario. EJ, we're over time now, so let's see. It could be an interesting week. I hope the Yankees don't go 1-5. Oy vey, they're frustrating me. If I took off this hat, you'd see I'm bald. I used to have a full head of hair before the Yankees started losing. It's probably true because they've been losing and not reaching the World Series for a long time. This was the Start Spreading the News show. EJ, thank you. All those people, millions of viewers, not quite, but lots and lots. Thank you for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day, everyone, and a great week.